Did a missed call just cost Samford a chance at a generational program victory?
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into this live postcast episode of the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. We are your hosts. That's Andy Patton. I'm Isaac Shade, and you're joining us at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. Thanks for making us your first listen or watch. Special shout out to all you everydayers out there. This episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Do you ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Well, take the Nissan Rogue or Pathfinder or Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. All right, gang, thank you so much for joining us live immediately, like literally seconds after we saw the end of Kansas and Samford. What we're going to be doing on our live podcast today is we will unpack some of the very biggest stories of the day. We'll start with Kansas and Samford. We'll get to Kentucky, of course, the Kentucky of it all. And then, Andy, we'll kind of go by viewing window throughout the rest of the show to unpack everything else. And then we'll see if we've got some questions and comments that we want to get to at the very end. Andy, we had been talking all week long about this Samford-Kansas matchup, like ad infinitum. I don't know how many times we talked about it. Everything we said came to fruition except the final score. And it might have not come to fruition simply because of a terrible call with 14 seconds left in the game.
Yeah, unquestionably, this was a missed call here. Nick Timberlake going up for a dunk attempt. I think Kansas had was it tied or did they have a 1-point lead?
Kansas was up 1.
Kansas was up 1 at that time. Timberlake, they
need to 89.
Yes, we do. Samford was pressing the entire game like they did. The way that Kansas was trying to break this press was often just throwing the ball way ahead. There was a point in the first half where I think Hunter Dickinson threw the ball to Samford like 4 times in a row. It was a very chaotic game, which is exactly what Samford likes to do. It's exactly what you, my friend, said was going to happen. Samford's going to play buckyball. They're going to cause chaos. They're going to frustrate Kansas. All of that came true. And yet here in the final seconds, Timberlake goes out for a run out and gets blocked. It was all ball. Every single replay that they showed. And if you're joining us after watching this game, you saw all of them. They probably showed it 10 times. There was not a single shred of contact on that. It was all ball. Horrible opportunity or horrible time. Let's put it that way, for a missed call by the officials. Timberlake hits the 2 free throws. Look, Kansas was up. We don't know that Samford would have scored had that not happened, had they called it a clean block. We don't know what would have happened after that, but the opportunity was there. And the fact that Timberlake made the 2 free throws, made it a 3-point game, it put more pressure on Samford to score from beyond the arc. They missed a 3-point shot on the ensuing possession. That ended up being the end of the game. But what a huge effort from this Bulldogs team. Yes. What a tremendous game contest. It was back and forth. For the majority of the game, Kansas had like a 10 to 15 point lead. It felt like every time Samford got it within 8, got it within 6, Kansas would go on a little 5-0 run and kind of maintain the lead. And for Samford to fight from being down mostly double digits for the entire game to be within a possession in the final 15 seconds and to have it end because of something outside of their control, it is absolutely devastating to see that happen. And this is not a knock on Kansas. They executed when they needed to execute. That's right. They got it done at the end. It's not Timberlake's fault. He made the free throws, but this is a really frustrating way for an incredible college basketball game to end. It is frustrating to see a plucky mid-major team that we had all these aspirations for, that we felt confident could do exactly what they did, to have it ripped away from them in this way. I mean, it's part of college basketball. It's part of March Madness. This is something that happens. As a Gonzaga fan, I will still forever say the phrase Kennedy Meeks was out of bounds in the national championship game in 2017, because those things happen. But this is really tough for a program that I think a lot of people wanted to see potentially make a deep run, and they had it pulled away from them.
Yeah, man. And can we just go back to that dunk that Achor had with, what was it, like 38? I mean,
that was amazing.
Vicious. I think you said, we were watching it together in real time. You said, just put Hunter Dickinson on skates.
Yeah.
And then Timberlake just laid that. I don't blame him, man. I'm not getting in the way of that thing. Unbelievable basketball game. Andy, we have to give all the flowers we can to Samford for that performance.
Yeah.
And look, let's also give all the like the deck was stacked all against Kansas in this basketball game. I mean, from injuries to everything else, to the environment there in Charlotte, like very difficult environment to play in. I'm imagining, I haven't done the mileage, but I'm imagining most closer to Samford's campus than they were to Lawrence, Kansas. And so just great job by Kansas too to survive that. Timberlake to have probably his biggest game as a Jayhawk in that moment. So let's not miss out on that. But Samford, you said it right, Andy. They did everything we expected them to do. Like Kansas averages 11.6 turnovers a game, 18 in this one against a less talented, smaller Samford Bulldogs team. And I don't say that to denigrate Samford. I say that to praise them, that they were still, because this was something else you said to me as we were watching the end of the game. Like everything that we expected to come true did. It's just that sometimes you just can't account for the bigness of a Kansas or a Kentucky or a North Carolina or any of these other blue bloods. But Andy, that said,
sometimes you can.
Sometimes you can. And it almost came to fruition. But you know what? Apparently Kentucky didn't account for, Andy? Jack Golke.
Wow, what a game.
We always talk about who are the names, right? Like who is going to become a household name after this tournament? Like I would imagine most of America didn't know the name Marquise Noel this time last year. Now they all do. But little did we expect it to come from a man named Jack Golke from Oakland. You know, it's kind of like Max Asmus multiple years ago. Andy, what an unbelievable performance from this team. Oakland beats Kentucky 80-76. Greg Kampe pregame said, quote, "We have a chance to change our lives." And Andy, that's precisely what they did.
What a game. What a performance from Oakland to take this one. But I mean, Isaac, the conversation has to be about Kentucky here. I mean, how frustrating would it be to be a fan of the Wildcats and to see the amount of talent that is being brought into this program year in and year out? They are consistently getting the top recruits. And in a year where the 2023 recruiting class was considered weak and people thought, oh, if this class isn't very good, what is that going to mean for Kentucky? Kentucky found gems. They found absolute diamonds in the rough in Rob Dillingham, Reed Shepherd. Those two guys were extraordinary all season long. This team dealt with injuries. They dealt with ineffectiveness from some of their starters. Justin Edwards finds his way at the end of the year. DJ Wagner and Aaron Bradshaw get healthy. You get guys like Ogena and Yenso stepping up and playing valuable roles. You get Zvonimir Ivisic back. And yet all of it gets squandered because for the fourth time in the last 5 years, Kentucky loses in the first round of the NCAA tournament. They have now taken 2 losses as a top 3 seed in the Big Dance ever in the program's history. They came in 2 of the last 3 years, of course, when they were a 2 seed, losing to 15 seed St. Peter's in 22, and now here losing to Oakland. I mean,
19-0 as a top 3 seed before that in the first round.
Yeah, unbelievable. And Kentucky has very high aspirations for what they want out of their program. And Calipari can continue to get the top-rated recruits. He can continue to make the NCAA tournament as a top 5, top 6 seed, finish in the top 3 or 4 in the SEC. But at some point, this is going to have to matter. And at this point, Isaac, as we're recording, just a few hours after that game ended, you got to start to wonder when that breaking point is coming, because I know Kentucky fans are completely finding this unacceptable that this team cannot advance in March.
They were already finding it unacceptable before this year. Like, I feel like it's been every offseason now for a while. And Andy, I think you're absolutely right. Like, the statement I'm about to make could be a truth. John Calipari might have just coached his last game as a Kentucky Wildcat. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that could be a true statement. Like, at the least, this is going to be a very interesting offseason in Lexington, Kentucky, to see what happens, to hear all the noise coming out of Big Blue Nation. I'm really curious to hear the response from our Locked On Kentucky host, Lance Daw, to hear what he has to say. But Andy, you talked about all those freshmen. Here's the thing. The moment was too big for these freshmen. It was who showed up for Kentucky? Trey Mitchell and Antonio Reeves.
Yep.
And that's it. Moment was too big for Reed Shepherd. I never thought I would say that about this young man who we've seen poised all year long. But there he is, just kind of crapping the bed, if we're being honest, Andy. And part of my frustration on their behalf is that Coach Cal continues to throw them under the bus. Here's his quote from after the game. Quote, "We made some critical mistakes at critical times again today. When you have a really young team and you look at where the mistakes come from, they were from freshmen," end quote. Andy, here's my issue with that. You're blaming these problems on your freshmen, but respectfully, you made this freshman bed, and now, my friend, you got a lie in it.
Yeah, 1,000%. It's the Mick Cronin strategy. Blame the players that you brought in. Blame the NIL that you didn't spend. Like at some point, you have to take accountability. And Cal has done this before. Typically, I don't think he leans as far in as like Mick does, for example. But like saying your team's making freshman mistakes, like you either have to, if you believe your freshmen are going to make freshman mistakes, you have to coach them out of them. And if you're not capable of doing that by the time March rolls around, that's an issue. Like, I don't mind if a coach is blaming his freshmen for making freshman mistakes in November. I don't even mind if you're saying that in December, maybe early January, but it's like, it's March. And this is a team where these freshmen carried you. They carried you all the way here, and now they're making mistakes, and now you're tossing them under the bus. Like, no, this is a coaching thing. You have to find a way to prevent this from happening. Kentucky's defense has been bad all season long. Their three-point defense has been bad all season long. So when a previously unknown kid from Oakland goes out and drops 10 threes, which, by the way, is just obscene that he was able to do that, that cannot
fifth player ever.
Freshman.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can't. It's blamed on your coach. I mean, it's blamed on your coach. And I would rather see Calipari take responsibility for that, because not doing that, I think, is even more of a negative statement of like, oh, our team made mistakes. Like, yeah, freshmen are going to make mistakes, but you as a coach have to hold them accountable, and you have to hold yourself accountable. And I'm not sure I see him doing that.
Yeah, you have to be able to stand there and say, this is what I need to hear John Calipari say. I did not have our team ready to play today. That to me is infinitely better leadership. That makes me respect you more, not less, Andy. And I think that's the issue here. You talked about Jack Golke, just the fifth ever time in NCAA tournament history a player has made double-digit three-pointers in a single game. Unbelievable stuff. We got Eric Kane, the host of Locked On Vols, in the chat and said, SEC had a bad day? I wouldn't know. Andy, that's because the Vols rolled, while the rest of the SEC was losing to worse seeded teams. Obviously, we just talked about Kentucky as a 3, losing to 14 Oakland. We had South Carolina as a 6, losing to 11 seed Oregon. And we had Mississippi State starting the day as an 8 seed, losing to Michigan State. And so, Andy, outside of Tennessee and what Rick Barnes' team did to blitz their way through, not allowing St. Peter's to do to them what they did to this Kentucky team we just been talked about. Really interesting stuff.
Shout out to Jermaine Couisnard, by the way, shooting guard for Oregon, a former South Carolina Gamecock, playing his old team in the NCAA tournament. All he does is drop 40, which is ridiculous. We haven't seen 40 since Carson Edwards did it for Purdue, however long ago that was. Just an insane game from him. Shout out to the Oregon Ducks for advancing. But Isaac, we also saw the SEC may have had a bad day, but we also saw a pair of Big 12 teams sitting on that 6 line. Both of them got upset. We didn't expect those to happen. We had one of the first games of the entire day was Duquesne coming out of the A10, kicking off the day with our first big upset. And we're going to get to that after a word from today's new sponsor, Manscaped. Folks, this episode is brought to you by the spring cleaning champions, Manscaped. This season, make sure to groom your carpets and the drapes with the leaders in below-the-waist grooming. Clear out that winter bush with Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 and watch your confidence bloom like the springtime flowers. Embrace the season and join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our special offer. Go to manscaped.com and use promo code LOCKEDON for 20% off plus free shipping. Their 5th-generation trimmer features 2 interchangeable next-generation skin-safe blade heads, a standard one for taking just a little off the top, and a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. Spring cleaning doesn't just apply to the nether regions. Get the full grooming experience with Manscaped's signature Beard Hedger Pro Kit and Handyman Electric Face Shaver. Whether you're looking to craft your signature look or clean up that neckline, these are always the right tools for the job. So get 20% off and free shipping with code LOCKEDON at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code LOCKEDON at manscaped.com. Nothing like a little spring cleaning.
Andy, this episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Folks, do you need last-minute tickets for the NCAA Tournament? Perhaps your team made it further than you expected, like Oakland, and now you're scrambling for tickets, but you're worried that you can't find good tickets or good deals. No worries, Game Time has got you. They're the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices. They've got views from your seat and a best price guarantee. With that, Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. With zone deals, you pick the section and then Game Time picks the seats for big time savings. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time, where you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Andy, we are going to get into the first 2 game windows of the day. Obviously, we mentioned that we kicked off the very first game of Thursday was Michigan State kind of having their way with Mississippi State. They'll match up with North Carolina on Saturday. As we record, we don't have the times yet. When you talk next, I'll go look to see if they've dropped those. But Andy, game 2, we had our first major upset of the tournament, the Duquesne Dukes taking down BYU, the 6th seed, 71-67. And it is the first time that Duquesne advances on since 1969. Andy, we got a 6th seed from the A10 now in the round of 32. What did you see from the Dukes in this game?
Well, we knew that BYU is a team that really has been overly reliant on the three-point shot, and it led them to some really high highs this year, like beating Kansas at Fog Allen Fieldhouse and various other excellent wins in their first season in the Big 12. I think this is overwhelmingly a successful first year in the conference for Big 12 or for BYU, because they finished 5th in the WCC last year. Now to be a 6th seed is fantastic, but we knew this could bite them, and Duquesne was coming in red hot. We talked about the A10, the massacre that happened in the A10 conference tournament, where the top 4 seeds all lost within the same 8-9 hour window of time. It was absolutely ridiculous to see. We all thought 5-seeded VCU, they're the team that's going to win. They're going to roll their way into the NCAA tournament. Instead, Duquesne steals that bid, gets in, and they looked great. Data Grant had an awesome game. He had 19 points. He had some clutch free throws down the stretch to help seal this one. But I think for BYU, it was just struggles at the 3-point line in the first half. Jackson Robinson really, really found it in the second half. I think he finished with 25. Really, really nice game from him. But for a BYU team that was expected to be a 5 seed, was supposed to be a 5 seed based on how the committee seeded all of the teams, but because of some wonkiness with their schedule, being unable to play on Sundays because they could not play in the same region as Kansas, which is why Gonzaga got that 5 seed. We kind of thought, all right, BYU's a little underseeded as a 6, but they got a Duquesne team that probably wouldn't normally be an 11 seed, a team that finished 6th in the A10. And yet, despite all of that conversation of, maybe BYU lucked out with their seed, they're going home early, and Duquesne, the Dukes, get a chance to take on Illinois in the second round.
And Andy, they by the way, we do have some tip times for Saturday. That game that you just mentioned, Duquesne and Illinois, will tip at 8:40 on TNT on Saturday. Great stuff there. But you know what? Duquesne is not the only A10 team that will be into the second round. Bonkers stuff, and it all happened because Dayton, who was down 17, Andy, 17 to Nevada with 7:15 to go in this game, winning percentage chance of 99.6% for Nevada at that point. What happens? Dayton closes the game. Andy, catch this. The Flyers on a 24-4 run. What are we talking about here? They wrap up a 63-60 victory. Really, really good stuff from them. I could not believe it was happening. Andy, you mentioned something to me about not Dana Altman, excuse me. Alford, thank you, Steve Alford, who just, yikes. You hate to see this, but Andy, 2 A10 teams into the round of 32. Who would have thunk it?
2 A10 teams and not a lot of representation from the Mountain West once again. I had a lot of Mountain West teams advancing in my bracket, and I kind of wish I had looked at it with a more another look and maybe thought about that again, because the Mountain West has this history. And last year, San Diego State really, really kind of pushed that narrative aside because of their run all the way to the national championship game. But Boise State loses their play-in game, folks. Boise State is 0-10 in NCAA tournament games. They're the first team to play 10 NCAA tournament games and win 0 of them. They started off the Mountain West's kind of with a rather ominous sign. And then we see Colorado State. Sure, they beat Virginia, the team most people thought was the least deserving to be in the field. Then they get waxed by Texas. We'll talk about that game a little bit later. And then now you have this game here where Nevada has, like you said, a 99.5% chance of winning. You're thinking, well, there's no way they're going to go down in that game. And yet they do. They fall to Dayton. Mountain West struggling once again to establish themselves as a conference that can do anything in the NCAA tournament. We'll see if San Diego State or Utah State or New Mexico, all 3 of them, are in action on Friday. Perhaps the conference can kind of rebuild some value. But this was a great comeback from Dayton. Shout out to them. A really good team. But yeah, this is a tough one for Nevada to swallow, and we'll see what Dayton can do against Arizona, who they'll get in the second round.
Andy, I don't want to blow by, there's obviously other games we're not going to spend much time on from the first 2 time windows, but when things of a historic nature happen, we got to call it out. You talked about Illinois, who beat Morehead State 85-69. Why do we bring that up? It's Terrence Shannon Jr. That is the name everyone knows, but we said it this week on the show. And so if you've been with us, you know this name. Marcus Damask has been, I hesitate to call him the Robin to Terrence Shannon's Batman, but it's almost like the Batman GIF where they're like pointing at each other. Is that it's the Spider-Man GIF? So Damask becomes just the 10th official triple-double ever in NCAA tournament history. And oh, by the way, let me read to you the names of the other people. You might not recognize 2 of them, but you should recognize the rest. Gary Grant, some dude from LSU named Shaquille O'Neal, David Kane, Andre Miller from Utah, Dwayne Wade from Marquette. Did he do anything else later on? Yeah. Cole Aldrich, Draymond Green did it twice for Michigan State, and then some dude named Ja Morant. Andy, how interesting that it's a couple, like with Ja and Dwayne, a couple guys that were kind of off at not major schools, right? Like really interesting stuff there, but really, really good for Marcus Damask. Andy, anything else from that first and second window games before we move on?
No, what I want to do now is talk about a player who came this close to joining Marcus Damask and the rest of those guys on that list. Anton Watson from Gonzaga was 1 assist short. The Zags brought him back into the game to try to get him that final assist. For those of you who thought, oh, well, Gonzaga's being able to play guys like that and just play them in these situations where they're just trying to have fun. Yeah, that's because they blew the doors off McNeese State, an absolute destruction of a game. Them and Washington State, 2 teams in the Palouse in Eastern Washington advancing. We're going to talk about those games and a few other results on Thursday. After a word from today's sponsor, Nissan. Folks, this week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. And we're talking about the Oregon Ducks. We talked about them a little bit earlier, but they are this week's Nissan Rogue. The team at I lost my notes again, dude. I know where did they go? Okay, here we are. This team absolutely surprised us all with a monster performance against South Carolina to advance to the round of 32. Like we said, 40 points from Jermaine Kuznar. I'm so excited for the round of 32 matchup. Oregon taking on Creighton. Dana Altman coached at Creighton for 15 years. Really excited to see how that shakes out. Anyway, take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. All right, Isaac, we got a lot more games still to get to here as we try to get through an incredible slate of games on Thursday. We talked a little bit already about Colorado State and one of the many Mountain West teams that lost. But Isaac, they were up 8-2 in this game, and then they only scored 11 points in the entire first half. What an insane run from Texas, 25-3 for them. I've been pretty critical of Texas. I've been kind of saying, hey, I'm not a big fan of this Longhorns team. I don't think they're going to advance. I thought either Colorado State or Virginia would potentially be able to knock them off. So I will wear that with egg on my face. Texas looked phenomenal in this game, particularly on the defensive end of the floor. They move on. Good stuff from them.
Yeah, Andy. We got Kaner in here in the chat, and so he's like, I don't know, man. Texas is looking pretty good, so he's going to have to deal with that. And Andy, I might have to, when we finish recording, I might have to go sleep on the couch because my wife is a Longhorn fan, and I didn't even realize it. But I picked Colorado State in this game, so I'm trying to make up for that one. Anyway, Andy, wild game there. I'm really curious to see if, remember, we talked about it this week, like Texas has all that experience from last year. Dylan DeSue back healthy. Can they keep going? But this two different shades of orange matchup on Saturday should be a lot of fun. Can't wait to see that one.
Well, we talked about it a little bit already, but Gonzaga McNeese and Isaac, you and I, when we were kind of previewing the games and talking about this one, like, I get why McNeese was a trendy upset pick in a vacuum. 30-win team. Will Wade's a phenomenal coach. He's been to the NCAA tournament, coached at the highest levels of college basketball, led LSU to a 25-5 record. I get it. I get all of that. But looking at what McNeese was successful at and looking about how it matched up against Gonzaga, it was hard for me to see how McNeese would be able to handle the Zags. Now, I didn't expect what we ended up seeing, which was Gonzaga running away with this thing in the first half. In fact, one of the facts they shared on the broadcast, McNeese is the only or the first 30-win team that had the worst margin of they were losing by the most at halftime of any team that has won 30 games in the NCAA tournament. Gonzaga was that far ahead, and it was 48-25 at halftime. No 30-win team has ever been down that much at half in an NCAA tournament game, and it didn't really get better for them in the second half. Graham Ike, perfect from the field in this one. Anton Watson, like we said, 1 assist away from getting a triple-double. Ryan Nembhard had 9 assists and only 3 turnovers. Just a masterclass of a game from Gonzaga offensively. They looked great defensively. Shahada Wells, 6 of 25 from the field from McNeese. The Cowboys just could not get it going. Gonzaga, they absolutely rolled, and they're going to take on an exhausted Kansas team on Saturday after having to fight through buckyball and the insanity that was that game we talked about at the top. I'm excited to see what Gonzaga Kansas looks like, and certainly a really strong performance from Mark Few and the Zags.
Yeah, Andy, I mean, for me, kind of what told the story of this game was 3-point shooting at halftime, where Gonzaga was 8 of 11, 72.7%, while McNeese was just 1 of 10.
Yeah.
You ain't going to win many basketball games if you're McNeese, and that's the discrepancy there. So, as you said, maybe a really positive bit of news for Mark Few's team is that Kansas is like, you remember that scene in Space Jam 1, like at the beginning of the main game, and it's like the iron lung and they're all in the bed. It's like, that's what Kansas is trying to pull themselves through right now. Well, Andy, we just briefly touched on earlier, Oregon, the team, the bid thief out of the Pac-12, 11 seed, knocking off 6 seed South Carolina. We had another Power 6 conference team unexpectedly win their conference tournament and become a bid thief. That was NC State. The question was, could they keep that energy rolling against Texas Tech, who admittedly has a little bit banged up, not able to get everybody, but NC State, they keep it going, 80-67. Sets up, by the way, who do they play on Saturday? Not Kentucky, but Oakland. So NC State legitimately might be able to continue going with this thing. And it's funny because these two coaches in similar boats. We talked about Dana maybe saving his job, Dana Altman at Oregon. And now Kevin Keats, I don't know if you're aware, Andy, of his contract thing. Have we talked about that?
Yeah, I think so, but tell the people.
So with Kevin Keats winning the ACC championship, it extends his contract for 2 years. And there was legitimate conversation about, like, is Kevin Keats done at NC State? So here we are, definitely not done because it's in his contract. So we'll have to see what happens there. Andy, we had been looking at these 10-7 matchups and expecting things to happen. Once again, we don't get that result. You know, we talked so much about Drake being so close to their campus, Washington State, having to travel all the way from Pullman all the way down to Des Moines, or where was it? Omaha. And yet they come in and knock off Drake and Mr. DeVries 66-61. Really good game, really back and forth and tight game, Andy. Was exciting to see. And you know what? We talked about it, but great for the Pac-12 to get a couple wins on their way out here. Arizona Oregon, Washington State, they're all winning while the SEC is not winning and while the Mountain West is not winning on Thursday. Great stuff for the Pac-12. Andy, what do you think? Anything else from any of these games?
Great news for the WCC too. Washington State joining the West Coast Conference next year. Gonzaga and Wazoo both picking up wins. We'll see what St. Mary's can do on Friday. The only note I'll make is you mentioned the coaching. Kevin Keatts is going to stay with his job. And looking at this Drake Wazoo game, I think it's possible that both these coaches are going to be coaching somewhere else next year. We'll see if Darian DeVries, he's a popular head coaching candidate at schools like Oklahoma State and other places like that, especially if Tucker comes with them, obviously a 20-point per game scorer. Meanwhile, I think Wazoo could potentially lose Kyle Smith to a better or a still Power 6 job, I should say, next year as well. But yeah, shout out to the Cougars for picking up their first win in the NCAA tournament since 2008.
And going back to the top of the show, we said it as Kansas and Samford was wrapping up. How long is Bucky McMillan going to be at Samford? We'll have to see on that. Andy, great show. Lots of fun. Great to be able to talk about and unpack Thursday's great slate. Man, we get to do it all over again on Friday, Andy. 16 more games coming our way. I cannot wait. We only had one seed play, so we'll get all three of the other 1 seeds in action on Friday. The final 2 seed, we haven't seen Marquette yet, so a lot more great action. Guaranteed that we're going to see some more upsets. Andy, anything you're looking forward to or expecting?
Lots of great games. I'm excited about, I mentioned St. Mary's Grand Canyon. I think that's a good one. I'm excited about Alabama Charleston. I said this before. I will say it again. If you are an NBA fan who's just kind of tuning in to college basketball for March, watch Alabama Charleston, because you probably don't want to watch Colorado State where they score 11 points in a half. That might turn you off from college basketball. That's not going to happen in Alabama Charleston. Both those teams are, Alabama's outside the top 100 defensive efficiency. I think Charleston's outside the top 175, both high octane offenses. I would not be surprised to see that one in the 90s for both teams. It should be a really good one.
Andy, I didn't even think about it until you said this. You know what happened to Colorado State? Virginia rubbed off on them.
That must have been what it was.
They got Cavalier all over their Rams jerseys, and now they're going out here. How did we miss that? That's exactly what happened. This is all Tony Bennett's fault. The Longhorns, Texas should be sending Tony Bennett gift cards to say thank you for that victory. Andy, so great to be together and unpack a great day, folks. We can't wait. We'll do this again tomorrow night live at the end of all of Friday night shows. Make sure you tune in with us. For all of those of you who are listening back or watching back later, thanks for hopping in. Everyone in the chat, so glad that you're here with us. I'm loving seeing everybody talking about their brackets getting messed up and BYU screwing things up. That's great. Bring all of that energy and come back tomorrow night when you don't got to get up for work on Saturday morning. If you're not subscribed to Locked On College Basketball, please do so on video and audio. If you're not part of our Discord community, the link is in the show notes. Come join us. We'd love to have you. Oh, man, Purdue's going to be in action tomorrow, Andy. So we got to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats. And until Friday night when we talk again, peace.